How's it going, y'all? So I want to talk about a common pitfall that people who are learning how to code might be falling into. And this is all related to copying code from Stack Overflow or from anywhere and pasting it directly into your own code base without understanding what it does. I think this is probably one of the easiest ways to get stuck and not really understand what you're doing because you're not taking the time to actually analyze like what's going on and kind of dive into the code and make sure you understand it. But before I dive into this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up because it helps my channel grow. And also be sure to press that subscribe and bell icon if you want to get more videos like this in the future that should hopefully help you become a better web developer or software engineer. So a little bit of story time. When I first started off as a web developer, I know I kind of did this a lot. I would just try to figure out a quick solution of, how can I make a drop-down navigation bar. So I go Google that, I maybe go and find a pre-made component, and then I basically copy and paste that code into my app and everything will be good. And I would be happy that I made it actually work, like I have a drop-down, but honestly, I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't actually take the time to understand what all those lines of code were doing before I pasted it into my application. If you can imagine, if you keep doing that, if you keep on just taking code and pasting it into your project, you're gonna have a bunch of Frankenstein code that you have no idea how to customize. And that is the main issue I think a lot of people are running into, is that they're copying code from either tutorials, they're copying code from Stack Overflow. And if you don't know what you're copying, you really should not be copying that code. Now, as someone who's been working in the industry for almost 10 years now, like I can go to Stack Overflow and copy code it and paste it and not really need to look at it because I know I have the skills necessary to actually dive into and understand the code if I really want to. Or if I need to customize it, I know I won't have an issue just reading through the code, spending 5 minutes to understand what it's doing, and then I can easily customize it. But if you're not in that position where you can copy code and within 5 minutes understand what it's doing, you need to make sure you don't copy it. So what can you do to kind of circumvent this issue? Well, if you do find a solution to your problem, make sure you actually spend time and read through it. Make sure you kind of implement it on your own. If you kind of like look through the code and understand their solution, try to implement it on your own first of all and make sure you understand what's going on. And I think there's actually tools out there that are making this a bigger concern, especially if you're using like GitHub Copilot, because now you can just type a comment and say like, make me a function that capitalizes all the people's name in this array and click enter. And now you have a full function that basically does exactly what you want. And if you're a beginner, what you need to do is read through that code, use a debugger, step through it, add console logs, pick it apart, understand what's going on, customize it a little bit so you can actually have experience with dealing with that versus just moving on to the next problem you're trying to solve, right? I think Copilot is going to cause a lot of issues for beginners if they don't take the time to understand the code that's being kind of injected right into their code base. So if you do have GitHub Copilot installed, I'm not saying it's a bad tool. I use it all the time and I love it. I'm saying that if you don't know what is being pasted into your code base, you need to take some time to understand it. And I think if you have a good understanding of the fundamentals, like for an example, let's say GitHub Copilot pastes in a for loop, hopefully you understand what a for loop does and how a for loop is set up, right? You have three parts to the actual like parentheses, you have the initialization, you have the conditional check, and you have the incrementing step, right? If you understand those concepts, you understand how you can add a block and make it like kind of loop over from 1 to 10, then it's probably fine to just trust the code that came in from GitHub. But again, make sure you actually take some time to pick it apart and understand it. And like I mentioned before, coding tutorials are another really concern that I have, is that they can make you fall into this pitfall a lot easier because now you're just kind of like typing what someone's telling you to type and you're not taking the time to like create that mental map of, okay, I'm typing for, this is a keyword. This keyword tells JavaScript that I need to do a loop. Here's some parentheses. I have three parts. I have the initializer, the conditional check, and the incrementer. And like, if you're just typing exactly what the person's saying, maybe what he's saying is not breaking down the lower level understanding or implementation of a for loop or a while loop or an if statement. Like sometimes, like when I was a beginner, trying to learn how to write an if statement actually took some time, right? If weather is 50 degrees outside, you can print a console log saying like wear a jacket or don't wear a jacket. And it seems really easy, but like when you actually need to code it yourself, you have to create that mental map of like, okay, what is an if statement? What happens when I have multiple conditions that are being concatenated together with ands or ors? And stuff can get really confusing. So if you just copy stuff without understanding what's going on, you're not doing yourself any favor at all. So I don't really know how much I can kind of talk about on this point. I just want to drive this point home. If you're a beginner trying to learn how to code, make sure you type up the code yourself. Make sure you understand the code yourself. Use a pencil and paper and draw out diagrams, draw out circles, draw out arrows. Make sure you understand like the flow of the code. Using something like a sequence diagram can really help you understand like how stuff is working, how components talk to each other. using something like a higher level diagram with the circles and diagrams and stuff can help you understand how a UI might talk to a backend, how a backend might talk to a database. Another thing that really helps you kind of understand the code you're pasting is to kind of comment it, right? So if the code you're pasting has no comments, then what I would recommend doing is going through every line and kind of comment out, okay, step 1, this is loading in a file. And then you add another comment for step 2 saying this is taking the contents of the file and capitalizing all of the first letters of the first words. Or step 3, this is splitting up the file into multiple parts, which gives us back an array. Step 4, yada, yada, yada. I think you understand what I'm saying, but be sure to make sure you have a good understanding of the flow of the code you paste in so that you're not completely lost when you need to do this stuff yourself. Anyway, if you like watching this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up if it helped you at all. Also, leave a comment below if you've done this before, if you just copied code and not really understood what you're copying. I think a lot of people have done this before. I have done it before as well. And also leave a comment if you understand a good way to kind of analyze the code you brought in so that you have a better understanding of what it does. And like always, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon if you want more videos like this in the future that should hopefully help you become a better web developer. All right, like always, have a good day and happy coding.